Life's equation functions the way it functions. It has all these variables in it, and it sums to your life. And so what I realized was that I could change the outcome of the equation. I didn't change the equation, I changed the variables, and the outcome changed. Like at 20, that equation produced a summation. It was the sum of my life. But what I realized was it was not the sum of all my life. It was the sum of my life to that moment. And that those variables would absolutely change. The next second would change because another second had been added to my life. So the variables had to change. And so I knew in the moments after, no matter how devastated I was, if we did not quit, if we just kept struggling through it, the summation of the equation would change. The summation of our lives would not end with the death of our son.
Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Regeter. Today, I'm joined by Andy Campbell, a resilient survivor and author who has faced childhood abuse, cancer, and the loss of his son to suicide, and now shares the 15 core beliefs that helped him overcome life's toughest setbacks. Life will always bring moments we don't see coming. And what if you could meet them with grounded clarity instead of panic? Andy shares how gentle, steady habits and beliefs can help you show up for yourself in navigating life's challenges. Find out how to gently strengthen your inner world so that life's storms feel less like battles and more like moments you can navigate with steady ground beneath you. Andy, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited for our conversation, but before we begin, I want to check in. How are you really?
I am really doing well today. I am. It is going to be a good day. How are you?
I love the way you frame that, first of all. Like, it's going to be a good day. You already set that intention. That's something I need to learn to do. I am doing better now that I have coffee. I mentioned before we started recording, a fly fell into my coffee. And personally, I drink so much coffee a day to stay awake. But we're good now.
Good, good.
I've had one of those weeks where I'm finally starting to feel better, but just in a therapy session, we started to talk deeper about kind of my childhood and what led to me starting the nonprofit and the podcast and all the bullying that happened along the way. And I noticed how much my mood just really went down because
Mm.
I haven't had the opportunity to really explore what that resilience felt like for me along the way. And I know you just have this powerful story about it. So I'm excited to learn from you today.
Well, yeah, hate to have all this, all these experiences, as we'll call them, go to waste. Um, Look, I think one thing, and I go to therapy myself. Um, I've been through a lot of therapy. I would say that one of the things that I have done over the years is shifted from I still have elements of kind of my introspective practice, whether that's meditation, mindfulness, prayer, or therapy. I still have a component of that that is just talking to someone. Sometimes we just need to talk to someone that you can't say everything to your friends or to your family. But I think also I have put a lot more effort onto the real practical applications and modalities that are action oriented. So for instance, you did recently a session on EMDR. I've done a lot of EMDR, and EMDR for me has had some very unexpected benefits. And one of them is when I would do talk therapy, when a subject would come up where I would leave feeling less optimal than I thought I would feel. I put that on the list to deal with in EMDR so that the next time I talked about it, I could speak about it without those emotions coming along with the conversation. So then it became like an action plan to do something. So now when I talk about something, if I just recognize that it sends me down I'll say less than optimal, but a bad path, either a negative view of myself, a negative view of others, anger, retribution, you know, revenge, like, any of those, because those emotions, those thoughts can come around when you relive those experiences. So when I have that happen, I put that on the list to deal with an EMDR so I don't have to carry that. So I think that's one of the ways to kind of set the intention to have a little bit of a better day.
The practical tools make such a difference. And right now, I love my therapist. I really do. But it's
Yeah.
more insight based. So
Yeah.
it's like we're talking about it, I'm learning about it a bit more. And then she's like, goodbye, see you
Yeah.
tomorrow or next
Yeah.
week. And it's definitely very helpful, but I often forget afterwards to engage in those practical tools, whether it's having therapy that's more EMDR, CBT, or just going home
Yeah.
and trying to reflect, do some mindfulness techniques, a
Yeah.
meditation, just something to reset. I've noticed I often don't do that needed piece, and maybe I should.
Well, I think it's, I tend to be kind of a process oriented thinker. Now, I hear pictures. You speak words, I hear pictures. So it takes me a little while to process things. So I see a picture that builds in my mind. I don't actually hear words, I hear pictures. But in the in that time when my mind is building a picture, when I'm listening to what someone's saying and I'm building a picture, that becomes kind of a process. So I'm kind of process oriented in the sense that mathematics makes sense to me. I like formulas that work. And so this whole kind of introspective piece, having been through a few negative experiences, um, the whole introspective piece kind of started to come into being as a process for me. So I started to think about it. Okay, we do like that discovery work. We do some talking, but after a while I realized like it was just what you said. Like I would talk about it and then nothing would really change. So I'd go back the next week and I'd talk about it again. And at some point I was like, I really don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, how do I get past talking about there's other stuff to talk about. Like, how do I get past this thing? And that was where like the modalities, CBT was very helpful, but I felt like it was kind of the beginning process. It's like the first step. And then EMDR can be really kind of, it's like exposure therapy. It can be kind of painful and difficult, but then the benefit of it is so kind of profound afterwards. Um, so yeah, then it became like a two-step process. It was like, okay, discover it, take action on it. And then it became like, okay, well, if you take action on it, then what do you do? And it's like, well, then you have to kind of practice it. Like, you have to make that your new habit. And so I think to me, it kind of builds into a process. And yeah, I think if we just go to therapists, no matter how good they are, that's why all these old cliches exist because they're statistically accurate, right? Like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So like they can lead you to the water, but that's not really the whole process, right? You're still thirsty. You got to drink. You got to take the next step.
That's so true. And I've noticed for me as a therapist, baby therapist, I'm still starting out. But my clients, I always do a practical tool. Like we always do some activity or exercise at the end so that we can tie the conversation together. And now that I'm hearing you say this, I'm seeing how helpful that is because I don't know, when you go through so much, it's so hard to carry it. It's so hard when you feel stuck in it and you're like reliving it over and over again, trying
Yeah.
to make sense of it all. And if you don't have those coping tools, if you don't have the self care practices, the mindfulness techniques, you don't have those actionable steps, it's just like you're living in that same moment almost forever.
I think so. I think it's not almost. I think it is living in that same moment forever. And I think so to me, these problems, like if I kind of step back and look at my own mind, a lot of times these problems look like if you've ever known anyone who knits, like some people like they knit and like they'll have yarn and all their yarn. But if you've ever seen like a ball of yarn that's just like all the strings or like that's the way my mind can be sometimes. Like it can just be like this completely wound up, none of the colored threads are separated. It's just this big, ugly ball of messed up yarn. And I think for me, when I think of my mind that way, the only way that I can begin to work through it is to keep pulling one of those threads out at a time, like remove one. And eventually, if I pull enough of those individual threads out, those individual strings of yarn, then I'm able to untangle this ball of yarn, this tangled ball of yarn that is my mind at the time. And so the kind of these the application of these practical modalities like an EMDR help kind of pull those, like pull each one of those strings of yarn out. So then the bundle gets smaller until finally it kind of unwinds. So that's why I think like, if I go to therapy, I used to go where they would, and they'd basically describe all the different colors of yarn that were mixed up in the ball. Right. And I was like, okay, I still have in my mind, I can't stop thinking about this, or I'm ruminating, or I have the same emotional reaction because all these different colored strings are still wrapped in this mangled ball of yarn. And I'm like, so you've identified it, but I haven't been able to untangle it yet. And so then that's what like the EMDR was like it started to untangle things.
I love that metaphor. It's so true. My brain feels like that often too. It's so much happening all tangled together, and trying to make sense of any of it feels impossible a lot of times. And then I get stuck in this fear of all these thoughts in my head create so much fear. And it's so hard to distinguish what's an opinion, what's a voice from outside, what's a past trigger, and what's actually true in this moment.
Yeah, I think, well, that's I think that's kind of like the art to the science. Is like, look, you can't, one of the things that has helped me, I guess what people say is being resilient. What has helped me is that ultimately in any of these events, I have come to terms that I have to do what I can do. And what I can do is primarily about me. I can't deal with the events that have happened. I can take some defensive actions or corrective actions with people who may be doing things to me. I can take a lot of corrective actions about the things that I have done to put myself in a situation where other things, negative things could happen to me. And so that's where I've kind of decided to put my focus on like, well, what can I be responsible for? Like I can't be responsible for the whole world. I can't be responsible for somebody else's actions, but I can be responsible for the introspection into my own pieces, and then what actions can I take to help kind of, I'll go back to that metaphor, kind of untangle that ball of yarn. Like I can put my effort there. And so I think, yeah, look, the therapist who she was she was like a godsend. She was a godsend. And it was after my son had taken his life and I had found him. And we had been through like an immediate grief counselor for that. And then I'd heard about this process, EMDR. And I went, I looked for EMDR therapists in our area, and everyone I went to was was not taking new patients. They had full book of business. They couldn't take new patients. And one finally said, well, I can't, but there's this therapist that just opened up her practice in this other larger practice. You should see her. I called her. It turned out to be the perfect thing. Like, I'm glad no one else was available. But as she went through my list of, what she would call traumas, um, by the time she got to the third sheet in the legal notebook, like, a legal pad, she got to like the bottom of the third one. She's like, I think we have enough. We'll work here. And I think there was, she was like, look, it'll take about an hour. We'll do this for about an hour. She goes, normally with most people, it's like 6 to 8 sessions. We work through stuff. She goes, it's probably 20 to 24 sessions. Like, that's what we're going to go through. I said, wow, that's a lot. Like, that's almost half a year. And she said, yeah. And then she explained to me what EMDR was going to be, what I was going to do. And I was like, no, no chance. Not happening. Not doing that. I've got it all sorted out. It's all in a box. I've dealt with it. And I'm not sure as hell not going to relive it again. And so then she explained to me all the things and reasons and observations she made for why it wasn't really in a box. None of these things were actually put away and that they were affecting my life. So she gave me a choice, which I thought it was a brilliant way to put it. She said, look, this will take us 24 1 hour sessions, 50-minute sessions, but let's call it an hour. So 24. So you can spend the time of one day dealing with this in a way that you can then separate from it for the rest of your life. Or you can experience all of that every moment of every day for the rest of your life. You get to make the choice how you want the rest of your life to be. So I ended up choosing the MDR. So I think that like those decisions are the ones that we have control over.
First of all, I want to say I'm so sorry for your loss. And second, it's amazing that you went to grief counseling, that you really showed up for yourself because it's really hard in those moments. But to then, I mean, that powerful statement from your therapist, like you have this choice. And a lot of times we feel paralyzed in those moments. And it's just this idea in our brains that this is going to last forever, that I'm never going to be able to find joy again. And for you to make that decision for yourself, I mean, it was presented to you kind of like in the Barbie movie, right? Like she had two options, and you decided to make that choice that helped you. And now you're using your story and what you've been through to help others, which just shows how resilient, how amazing of a person you are.
Well, I don't know about all that, but I appreciate the kind words. Um, Look, I had developed over years what I later came to call my 15 core beliefs. And they're the beliefs that I fall back on when I don't know what to do. And I think one time I crashed a motorcycle. I was on the interstate, long story, crashed a motorcycle. In the state I live in, motorcycle helmets are not a requirement, but I always wore one just in case I had a crash. And that helmet saved my life that day. It took the top of the helmet off. It would have been my head, but it took the top of the helmet off and it left me a little injured, but I walked away from it. I think each of us needs to come to terms with our like those core beliefs that are inside of us. Not the things that are fads, not the things that come or go, but kind of like the universal things. And they're not even beliefs, like necessarily like how we see the world as much as they're how we're going to respond to the world. And so those core beliefs are like if you're on a motorcycle and you crash, you don't have time to put the helmet on when you're crashing. You have to put it on before you crash, right? Like because when you need it, it's too late. And to me, that's kind of the same way with these 15 core beliefs. Like I have to have them on. I have to have them in anticipation that something in life is going to go wrong. I could contribute to it. They could contribute. Somebody else could contribute to it. It could just be a thing that happens in the universe. Like things happen. Okay. Um, my father used to tell me all the time, I think it comes from the book of Job or either the book of Ecclesiastes. I can't remember which one, but it basically says, I think it's Job because I think his friends are asking him, why have all these bad things happen to you? And one of his answers is, uh, the rain falls on the just and the unjust. It just does. Like the universe just works a certain way. So sometimes it rains on you and sometimes it rains on somebody else. It's just raining everywhere all the time. It's just, if you thought about the world, if you thought about rain falling everywhere, somewhere in the world every second of the day, it's just not falling on you at this moment, but it's falling on someone. And so that's kind of the way I look at things that happen in our lives. They're happening every day. It's just happening to someone else right now. You don't notice it. It becomes really important, personal when it happens to you, but it's happening to somebody else right now. Everything that has happened to anyone at any time is happening right now to someone somewhere. It's just not happening to you. So one day the rain will fall on you. You need to have your helmet on before the rain comes, before the crash happens. And so for me, that's the 15 core beliefs. So when my son took his life, I thought about my family. I had to have meaning. If you haven't read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, highly recommend it. It's a
Mhm.
life-changing book. He lived through the camps. He was at Auschwitz and other camps, and he lived through those. Lost everything that he had. He was a psychiatrist, and when he came out, he wrote and created this new psychiatric scheme for how to deal with, how people survive. And one of the ways you survive is you have to have meaning. You have to have meaning in life. So if you don't have meaning, find meaning, get meaning into your life because that's what will sustain you. But the 15 core beliefs that I had written down over the years, they were for me things that I had observed that I found to be true, right? I had observed them and, in my view, seen them tested. And in the long term, maybe not in an instant or today, but over a longer period of time, they had all seemed true to me. So I adopted those. When my son passed away, I knew a few things. One, always fall forward. Like, so it's a remembrance for me, for my family. Part of my meaning is correcting 3 generations of bad behavior. Had some very successful, not wealthy people, but they had come up from basically nothing. They had worked hard, but there were bad behaviors that had been transferred generationally. And one day I decided I wanted to correct those bad behaviors. I wanted to stop those bad behaviors and pass forward better behaviors, maybe some new bad behaviors, but certainly not the old bad behaviors, and some new better behaviors. And so that became like a meaning. That's one of the things that sustained me through when I was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. That and seeing an example in my mother of how to struggle against cancer. So these core beliefs held on. So when my son passed away, it was always fall forward. Get your mind facing the direction of your goal. What's your goal? Your goal is your meaning. Okay, get your mind set back on that. It was, equations are constant, but variables are constantly changing. It's another core belief because I told you I'm kind of process oriented. So like equations I learned when I was long ago when I was in I majored in finance and I liked finance because the equations always summed to the correct answer. Like they always summed to an answer. But what I observed was if you change the equation always works the same way. So like your life's equation functions the way it functions. It has all these variables in it and it sums to your life. But the variables in a static equation, the variables are what change. And so what I realized was that I could change the outcome of the equation. I didn't change the equation, I changed the variables and the outcome changed. And I realized that life is kind of like that. Life today is like at 20, that equation produced a summation. It was the sum of my life. But what I realized was it was not the sum of all my life. It was the sum of my life to that moment. And that those variables would absolutely change. The next second would change because another second had been added to my life. So the variables had to change. That meant the outcome would change. And so I knew in the moments after, no matter how devastated I was, and I was devastated beyond like the ability to communicate it, but, and my wife was devastated. It would be unbelievable. My other children, his siblings would have but I knew if we did not quit, if we just kept struggling through it, the equation, the summation of the equation would change. Like our life would not, the summation of our lives would not end with the death of our son. We just had to keep going so that the equation could change, right? The variables would change. The summation of our lives are now more than up to that moment. So the core beliefs for me, and I'm not saying everyone should adopt those same core beliefs. If they're helpful, adopt the ones, adapt them to to who you are and how you function. But what I am certain of is the rain will come, the rain will fall on you. And when it does, you need to already have a belief system in place for how you're going to respond in the moments when you are incapable of responding. You have to have a default program inserted in so that if this thing happens, you don't have to think. You just have these things to hold on to, little life rafts that will carry you until you can be rescued. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense. And it's so true. It's so easy to, first of all, that's something I say all the time is that we need to have the tools before life happens,
Yeah.
right? We need to have these tools ready because when we don't, what do we do? It's even hard a lot of times when you have those tools ready if you don't have it as almost like a habit, a
No,
repetition.
you need to have them. Look, I apologize for interrupting, Fran, but look, you need to have them. That is part of the thing we talked about up front, right? Like you identify a thing and then you take action on the thing and then you make that the action you took, you implement it long enough so that that becomes the habit. You need that to be habitually the way you respond to situations. You need to not react. You need to respond. You need to have calm response, not a hyped up adrenaline. Or if you have adrenaline, you need your mind to be able to control your adrenaline response. You need these things in place. It's why like Navy SEALs practice so much that it becomes, that's why they say, like what is it? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's because they practice it so much that then they can move quickly without all of the emotion. A lot of the thinking they have pulled out of the process because it's ingrained in them how to respond, what to do. And I think I think we can apply those things, but we must apply them while the sun is shining, which is paradoxical, right? Because you're like, well, I have these tools. I can go to my therapist if the rain comes. And you're like, no, you need to do that. You need to then use practical modalities to change the way you will respond, adopt a more optimal response mechanism, and then practice that. So when it rains, which it's still going to hurt, it's going to be bad, all those things are true, but your goal is to be resilient and survive and then get back on your feet and keep moving forward and prosper in spite of those things happening. And you cannot put your helmet on when you need it, right? So you can't have the helmet sitting on the back of the motorcycle and you're like, well, if I crash, I've got a helmet. I'll put it on when things go south. Doesn't work. You got to put it on. Then you got to practice it every day, putting it on, right? Like you can't go sometimes without, you got to put it on every time because you never know when life is going to happen. So I would say like, it's not just important to identify it, it's important to take action and practice it, which is hard to do because when you have no problems, why focus on how you're going to respond to problems? Human nature is go have a cocktail, go out with your friends, go have fun, enjoy the good times because, you've had some bad times. But really, what I would encourage people to do is take a little bit of that good time, take a little bit of when the sun is shining, and do the hard work so that you're better prepared because there will be days when the sun doesn't shine. 100% going to happen.
Exactly. And that's why I've learned to start developing different tools into my day. So, one thing I, first of all, always do is go for a walk to practice clearing my head and those mindfulness techniques of feeling the sun on my skin when it feels like everything is so dark, or paying attention to the breeze and the sound of the leaves, or just being able to ground myself in that moment and see the world outside of what's happening in my head. Being able to do these cognitive like reframes, but not going from negative to positive, because in those moments, I can't just go from the world's ending to everything's great. But how can I make a step of encouragement just to get me through this moment, to get me to that next step? I have this happiness jar that every day, at the end of the day, I write down one moment that made me smile. Even when it feels like there was no reason to smile, I can always find something, whether it was my dog giving me like a kiss on the cheek, right?
Yeah.
Finding those small things that I could add into my day every day has made such a difference because 6 years ago, I ended up in a psych unit because I didn't have these tools. I didn't have these tools. I didn't know what to do. I lost someone so close to me and I reacted. I didn't know how to respond. And then just as an added bonus for myself, I created this like emotional wellness toolbox that I have a piece of paper printed out. I have a note on my phone. I have a picture on my phone of it. And I have like a little jar that I could just pull something out of that tells me what to do in those moments if my brain really can't remember. If it feels like everything's too much, just having even it written down on top of these daily habits has made such a difference. And I wish more than anything these were more conversations we're having, especially at a younger age, letting people know that if we equip people with the tools before they need it, it significantly increases their chance of continuing on.
So two things. I think that's extremely well said. I think you're absolutely right. And the practices that you're doing in the beginning, I would say there's kind of a metaphor in the experience, right? Or a connection to what we're talking about in your practice of walking every day. You know that there are going to be days when it's going to rain or snow or whatever, or the inclement weather, and you won't be able to walk. So when the sun's shining, you actually take the time away from enjoying your day, and it is kind of enjoyable, but you make sure you do this thing because maybe tomorrow's not going to be a good day where you can, like maybe the weather's not going to allow you to go out and walk. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? Like you have to go do that thing. And I think it is, kind of a nice visual to remember for people to remember that both metaphorically and practically, some days it's sunny and you need to go do the work then. Go do your practice then, because there will be days when the weather doesn't, it rains and you can't do it, right? And then I think you talk about doing things at a younger age. Everyone, and I will tell you, as someone who did not go through, did not realize these things, like I survived. I guess one would say I was resilient through a lot of things through life, but I did not find a way to take action to separate myself from those things. So they just kept dragging along with me, right? There was no way to, until much later in life. And so I do think that you are giving wise counsel to say you should start earlier. And I think people will talk all day long about how much money they should save for either a rainy day or they should say, like they want to put money into a 401k. They're investing every day. They're working or they're doing something or they're trying to save or they're working to save and they're saving it in some way, shape, or form. They're doing something thinking about the longer term. Now, I wasn't one of those people actually, because I never really thought I'd live long enough to worry about any of those things. But I know there are people who do think longer term. I think it's even more important than financially thinking longer term is to think mentally fortitude longer term. Like, what are you putting in your mental 401k that you can draw on? What are you putting in your mental savings account? What are you putting in your spiritual savings account? What are you putting in, bundle it all up. What are you putting in your resilience savings account that you can draw on when the time comes, when you need something? And so, yeah, I think people spend a lot of time thinking, some people spend a lot of time thinking about putting, good memories, in their good memory account, right? And they feel like good times in their good times account, and they think about, money in their savings account, and they think, but not enough people think about long term the practices of putting and investing in your resilience account.
Yes, exactly. So beautifully said. It's learning how to put these tools into your toolbox, being able to make moments to invest in your mental health, whether it's taking 30 seconds a day to take some deep breaths, or it's taking 10, 20 minutes to do a meditation, or it's getting outside or stretching or just any small thing that you can do. It doesn't have to be these big things. A lot of times there's this misconception that taking care of yourself, that self-care is face masks or spa days or shopping's a big thing that I hear a lot. And these are just the things that I see on TikTok over and over
Yep.
again. And they're the thought
Yep.
patterns that I've fallen into many times in my life. A lot of times we think it has to be these big things and these big financial expenditures, and it doesn't. It can be something as simple as scheduling a minute between your meetings to take some deep breaths or stretch your body. It could be something as simple as, for me, what I like to do is I have my calendar's color coded and there's personal time in it and it's pink. So it really, really stands out like bright neon pink. And I schedule in me time,
Yep.
whether it's 30 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, making sure I'm really prioritizing that mental 401k because it's just as important as everything else in my life. I would even say, for me personally, it is the most important thing because I have this tendency to really go to low moments where it becomes very difficult to want to get up, to want to survive. And if I don't make those moments for me, I don't know if or how I would get through.
I think I think again, you're 100% right. The it is the most important thing. Pardon me, there is nothing more important. And the reason there is nothing more important is because everything else flows from that. Your ability to accomplish everything else flows from that. Now, I don't say that as someone who is as disciplined as I should be in doing those things, right? I do have things on my calendar to remind me, but I get wrapped up in meetings. I get wrapped up in family. I get wrapped up in this. I get wrapped up in something I want to do, but everything else flows from that. And I think we can kind of sense, if we become more sensitive to it, we will start to sense in ourselves we have, when we have gotten away from that time and, um, because our batteries start running, like we've all had an old phone that you charge, and over time the battery's been charged so much that like it just starts wearing down. So no matter how much you charge it, it goes down to 3% in 45 minutes, and I think that's kind of, and then it's 30 minutes, and then it's 5 minutes, then it just doesn't work anymore. And I think that's because we're not taking the time to do those really small things. It's an excellent point that it is not. As a matter of fact, what I found was like going, if um, let's take going to the spa. Like that actually ends up putting a lot of pressure on the rest of your day because you've had to take so much time out to go do it. And then it's cost so much money to go do it. So this thing that was supposed to be relaxing sometimes becomes like, damn, it made things worse. It's like going on a vacation and leaving no time at the end of the vacation to recuperate before you have to go back to your daily life. And then like you come off vacation and you're exhausted. So then you go back into your daily life and you're still exhausted. You're as exhausted, maybe more so than before you went on your vacation. And so I think, yeah, like why have all these bigger things tend to they have the opportunity to actually take away from what it is that we're pursuing when we do them. Whereas the small things, you can do those repetitively during the day. You can sit down and do like the alternating nostril breathing for 5 minutes, during the day. I mean, you're going to be sitting somewhere breathing. So, you could just breathe differently for 5 minutes. And it doesn't have to be a 20-minute breathing exercise, 5 minutes. They say, I've read where it's like 4 minutes will change, like your blood pressure and your anxiety response and your adrenal glands, like 4 minutes. So do it 4 minutes. Get up and walk around. Like if you're at a desk job, get up and walk around in between your call. Like, get up for 5 minutes. Just walk either outside or down the hall. I've started walking barefoot, just on grass in the mornings. Like weather permitting, I just go out and I walk, a mile or two, uh, and it's difficult because I've been through a lot of chemotherapy, so I have this thing called neuropathy, and it can be painful, to walk. But I found that if I get through the discomfort, like just putting my feet on the earth and walking, like it resets my day. It gives me a more positive outlook. Can't do that every day. So then on those days, I have to shift up and have something else to kind of think of and do. But I think you're right. We don't do enough small things throughout the day. We grind ourselves down working to get to the big thing. And then the big thing never can really make up for how much we ground ourselves down getting to the big thing, you know. Carolyn Mays, I don't know if you know Carolyn Mays, MYSS Mays. She's written a ton of books and, does a lot of stuff around spirituality. And, she says that's the reason she has like a prayer practice every day. Like she takes a few minutes every day just to do that because that's like her reset every day. And it's not like, like an hour. So it's just like 5 minutes, and that's going to do it. And I think, breathing exercise, just those things to kind of reset you and do it throughout the day. Not that I'm very disciplined about it, but I do know when I do that, I, I absolutely am more likely, the probabilities of me responding instead of reacting go up if I do that. And I know when I haven't done it because I start to react, I start to ruminate, I start to get angry about things that normally, if I'm doing these little things, they're just not that big a deal. So I think if we listen, our mind, our body is giving us cues that we need to take those little 5 minute breaks. We need to do those little calming things. It's telling us I'm a big believer that there is a still small voice that talks to each of us. Okay. Whether you believe that it's God, the Holy Spirit, your intuition, the universe, put on it whatever name you want to put on it. But we all have, if we listen close enough, and that's one of the reasons why we need to get quiet for 5 minutes a day, because you need to hear that little voice. And that little voice is never talking bad about you. It's never telling you you're not worthy. It's never telling you things would be better if you weren't here. It's never telling you that your life is meaningless. It's never ever telling you to take your own life. That's the big loud voice. That's the big loud voice that's always telling you that stuff. It's always telling you the bad stuff. I get it. Back when there were saber-toothed tigers, or even today, if you were out on the savannah of Africa, you'd want that loud voice to tell you there was a lion nearby, right? Loud voice, very important, very important. But normally, day to day, minute to minute, the loud voice gets us in a lot of trouble and it leads us to react. It leads us to distrust people. It leads us to think everyone is out to get us. It leads us to be vengeful. It leads us to be jealous. It leads us to all the bad things, typically, that voice leads. But if you get quiet for a few minutes a day, if you can get quiet and you can listen to that very still small voice, it is always something positive, right? Now, it may be telling you to do something that you don't want to do, that the loud voice is telling you not to do. Okay, that's different. And it may be telling you something that's going to take courage to do. It may be telling you something that is more difficult to do, but it's always telling you something that's better for you. And so if you hear a voice that's talking to you in a negative way, that's the loud voice. You haven't gotten quiet enough yet to hear the quiet voice. You may think it's a soft voice. You haven't gotten quiet enough because the small, still voice never says negative things. Always talks to you positively, always encourages you, and it will be the thing that says, this is what you should do, and you can do it. The loud voice will say, screw that. That voice doesn't know what it's talking about. You have no idea how painful this will be. You don't want to do that. So I would say that one of the purposes, because it's that still small voice, I think, that gives us the advice that re-energizes us to deal with the day.
I love that. And I think that's a big, like, problem point for me is I often don't quiet my brain enough to listen to that small voice to really hear it. And when I do, a lot of times it's kind of telling me to get out of my comfort zone, to try
Yeah,
something
it's a
new.
problem, right?
It
It's
is.
a,
And that reminder that you can do hard things. You
and
can,
and it will be hard.
yeah.
It will be hard, and it will be uncomfortable. And that's okay, you know? Like I heard a saying, Carolyn Mays has a thing, and I'm not gonna say it properly, exactly what she said it, so I hope it comes across with the intent behind what she said. She said, "Why do people think if they do things that will, you know, like in her view, it's God telling you, it's that still small voice is the creator leading you. Okay. And so in her view, why would why would you do something that will obviously take a miracle and then to accomplish it and then somehow get to it and be frustrated or angry because you need a miracle to accomplish it, right? And so I think what she's saying is, yeah, that still small voice is telling you to do something and it's going to be hard, but there will be a way. So when you're in it, don't lose faith because it wouldn't have told you to do this thing if it wasn't going to provide you with what you needed to do it. It's just you got to survive long enough for that to happen. So, yeah, I think it's always like every now and then it'll say, "Hey, you're doing the harder thing." I think it does say like you're doing it the hard way. Why don't you take a breath? Why don't you breathe differently? Because you were designed that if you breathe a certain way, your body will respond a certain way. That'll connect to your mind. It'll connect to your soul. Like do that. Like it's telling you those things. But then sometimes it'll say, you know, I got this plan for you. Go do this other thing. And you're like, I'm going to do that. Like, I don't have the skills to do that. I don't know anything about that. Like, you start a podcast, you didn't know how to start a podcast. You didn't know what you were doing. Like, you had to do it, right? Like, you just had to go do it. And then you decided when things didn't go exactly right. I'm sure there were some moments where things didn't go exactly right. You didn't have the microphone you needed. You didn't have the headset. You didn't have this. You didn't have that. That episode didn't come out the way I wanted it to, but you have to have the courage to go, okay, it didn't, but I do believe I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what the little voice told, the good positive voice told me to do. I'm sure it will provide me a way. So I will just keep going. And then you go, oh, that's the microphone I need. Oh, well, this is how I should. And yes, you persevere through it. That's small examples or maybe important examples of having resilience. Like it's a great example, I think.
It is, and that's a big thing. You don't have to have it all figured out to start. You don't have to know exactly how to get through every moment to make to take that leap, to take that step forward.
Not
You can
only do you
start
not
it.
have to have it, Fran, you will not have it.
True.
Not only do you not have it, you will not have it. But that's okay. You don't know what's going to happen in the next moment anyway, right? Like we think we've got these plans. We think that's part of our control issue. It's why we have many disappointments, right? It's like, I guess it's kind of like Buddha saying, hey, if you hold on, if you have an attachment to that thing, you will certainly be disappointed when it doesn't happen. I think many times we have an attachment to our knowing what the next moment will hold. I think that's why my son took his own life. He had an attachment. He believed he knew that things were never going to be better. He believed in that moment that this was the best. He was attached to that belief. But if you let go of that belief, then you come to the realization that it's really not that big a deal to go do something you don't know how to do, or that like start the process of learning how to do something you don't know how to do, because you don't even know what the next moment's going to hold. It's a facade. We don't know what's going to happen 30 seconds from now. We think we know what's going to, we have some expectations. We're kind of like AI. We're predicting right now based on the last 30 seconds what's going to happen, but you don't actually know,
Yeah.
right? There's somebody right this moment, I'll take it to, there's somebody, let's do a positive and a negative. There's somebody right this moment, for them in their lives, they are getting exactly what they had hoped for, what they had prayed for, and what they wanted. Okay. Maybe it was a couple who had been working to have children and they hadn't been able to have children and they just had the birth of their first child. Like that's it. There's someone else 30 seconds from now, they don't know it. They're gonna die in a car crash. It's gonna happen. It's happening all over the place. We have no control over what's going to happen. So once you kind of give up that, what disappointment is there in what happens next?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not attached to what happens next. You are just going to live with what happens next. And you're going to survive it. You're going to have perseverance. You're going to go through it. So yeah, you can have fear of what that still small voice is telling you to do, which by the way, again, is positive. It never tells you to kill yourself. Okay. That's still small. If that's what you're hearing, that's not the voice. Okay. That's the negative voice talking. When the still small voice tells you to go do something or it encourages you to take a different path, you will absolutely not know how to do it. Why would it encourage you to? I mean, you won't know how to do it. Or maybe it's something that you did know how to do that you haven't been doing, and it's encouraging to go back to a thing that you know. But it's okay that you feel like you're being encouraged to go do something you don't know how to do. You don't have it figured out because you don't even have the next second figured out. We just think we do. And so that's where we come to this. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing 1 second from now.
That is so true. And it goes back to what you said about the variables, right? This isn't the summation of your life forever. Andy, you
No.
have been so amazing, full of so much wisdom that personally I needed. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. As we are wrapping up, how can people learn more about you?
You can go to my website, which is askandycampbell.com, and you can find out where I'm at on social media there. You can find a link to the book there. You can see other things, my cancer protocol that got me through that, different techniques that I've used, modalities that I've used. But that's where the best place to find me is askandycampbell.com.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.